Audio. Live broadcasting. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. What I was saying is that today is Trans Flag Day, and I was just recounting the story of how that came to be. To sum it up, Monica Helms, 1999. Hey, let's make a flag. So she made a flag. So today is Trans Flag Day. And for those of you who aren't aware, you can find a Space Pride version of the trans flag over on astropride.com. See, I updated the bottom thing. We've got astropride.com, and of course my website, which also connects to astropride.com. But c'est la vie. In any case, Space Trans Pride flag. This is the sticker version. There's also a full-size flag version, and it's made from real space images, in case you did not know. Now, today, we're up to no good, as per usual. I've been working on a few different projects. I'm trying to finish my intersex history project, but I keep getting sidetracked with other current events. And so I'm very close to finishing pre-production for the intersex history, but then other stuff has been happening. The Title IX drama just continues to pile up, and so I started to do a deep dive on that. And, well, TLDR, my brain, I need a break. So today we're talking about the Wake County Schools. Wake County Public Schools. That's what it is. So back in June or July, Wake County Public Schools hired a new music teacher for the elementary school. That music teacher happens to be a trans person. Nobody cared until this week, because libs of TikTok made a big deal out of it. And now suddenly, well, TLDR, here we are at a school board meeting. Now, normally these school board meetings are very boring and very procedural, but as you can imagine, once there was a political big stink about it, okay, in fairness, it's not just libs of TikTok. There's a local politician running for office who needed a distraction, and so she also made a big deal out of it. All kinds of weirdness. In any case, we're going to go to Wake County Public Schools because there's so many people. This is the list of speakers. Not all of them are here to talk about the alleged trans teacher, but a lot of them are. And that's going to give us a variety pack of the public perception of things these days and why it's so controversial when a trans person tries to, exist in public in the United States of America today. So the first couple of speakers were students talking about school stuff, and that's valid. That's fine. We're going to skip over those because they're not what we're here for. Then there's supposedly a non-student speaker talking about the agenda, which is like budget stuff, is what they actually intend to talk about today. Keen-eyed viewers will notice that the name, and I do mean keen-eyed because I realize this is very small on your screens because we're vertical, is Christine Jorgensen. Anyone who knows anything about trans history knows that name. That's not a real speaker.
So it's Christine in the building. Christine Jorgensen.
Obviously, someone is trolling, but the board members don't know anything about trans history because trans people aren't taught about in public schools. So for those of you who don't know, Christine Jorgensen was the World War II veteran who became super famous in the early 1950s for being public about being trans. She stayed in Europe after the war, got her surgery, came back, fully transitioned, and the media went nuts. She was not the first, but she was definitely the first really famous trans person in the US. So there's that. Much like, okay, I don't want to allege that Miranda's trans. To my knowledge, Miranda's not trans, but Miranda is super famous around here. Longtime supporter of the channel, sent me the heater that saved my life this past winter, and other various goodies. Miranda has membershipized And if you too would like to membershipize, you can do that starting at just 99 cents, less than $1, less than the cost of a single egg. Now, there's a few different levels, of course. The first level is if you like the cool emojis, and we have a fuck ton of emojis. That's the level for you. But if you want more, there's a bunch of member exclusive content available at the middle tier, the Spark level. And then, of course, at the top level, there's other benefits, including getting your name in the credits at the end of the show. Thank you so much, Miranda. As always, wonderful. I'm doing things out of order because I'm very distracted, and as always, I'm in a tremendous amount of pain. On that note, this may be a fairly short show. I'm aiming for 2 hours. We'll see how it goes, but shit's been coming up today. In any case, if you're new here, this is one of the things I do. Human rights for all humans, especially trans and intersex people who are being so beaten up in the public discourse. My name is Ember. I'm an intersex woman of transgender experience, and this is a show I do when I have both the availability and regular ability, which is somewhat questionable today, but we're going to do our best. Welcome. I hope you take a second, hit the subscribe button. Now, let's take it away.
All right. We'll turn to our off agenda with Renee Siegel.
It takes them a second sometimes.
So I've been coming to school board meetings for a while. I took a break. That was fun. But over the years, I've noticed that sometimes.
Now, she is a local. She talks about having come to these meetings before. Fantastic. Locals, of course, should be here. But I want to point out that there's a Moms for Liberty person in view behind her. There's another person with a some sort of trans rights shirt. I believe that person is a local. Moms for Liberty may be a local. I don't know, but people are here for political issues.
Sometimes people don't use the words, specifically culture warriors, don't use words the way that, I would say regular people do. Some of you might all recall when a gentleman stood up here and brandished the book Worm Loves Worm, a very wholesome children's picture book, and he called it filth and mental rape because the worms loved each other. I don't know. It didn't make sense. But I'm noticing the same thing happening again right now. So I thought I would provide some translation services. We know that there's been a kind of national kerfuffle created because there may or may not be a teacher in our school system that's either non-binary or trans. I don't even actually know.
And that's by design, because even though it is the South, even though it is North Carolina, the local news, the newspapers, the TV stations have taken great pains to make sure the teacher's name is not dragged into the nonsense, because the teacher hasn't actually done anything wrong, just exist. And they're very keenly aware that in today's culture, there's a very high risk of threat to their personhood. So people don't actually know the teacher's name or their actual transition status.
But I've been seeing people talk about, oh, well, there's instruction on gender and sexuality. When what they really mean is a trans or non-binary teacher exists. They're not providing lessons on gender or sexuality. To the best of my understanding, they're providing the curriculum required by this county and the state. But apparently the mere existence of a human being is now to be considered a lesson.
And that's a thing that we have seen before, right? When gay rights was the moral panic of the day, conservatives did exactly the same thing. They said, oh, well, the very presence of a gay teacher is teaching my children about things I don't think they're ready for. Whether you think a person is ready for another person's existence, you don't get a vote in that. They said the same thing about racial integration. They said the same thing about women's equality. Every single time we make any kind of social progress, the conservative turn it into a boogeyman. And then suddenly, these people that have been around children their entire lives are controversial. And I take exception. Oh my goodness, where's my pearls? Ah.
And then I've heard people talk about transparency and parental notification, and that one was a real stumper for me until I realized, kind of to my horror, that what that means is a newly imagined right to be provided with a description of the teacher's genitalia.
Now, what she's talking about is a thing that has come up in the local news as part of the discourse. There's a person here actually at this meeting who is a local anti-trans activist who rabble rouses, who throws out higher up talking points from the Heritage Foundation and all that assorted nonsense. And one of the things he's been on about lately is a certain North Carolina law that requires parents be notified of changes in the curriculum. He's running around saying that this law means parents should be notified whenever a new teacher is hired, or is it just trans teachers? He doesn't really say. One thing we can really say, Alira the Free sent us a super chat for 110 Turkish lira. Thank you, Alira. And she says, good night, lovely people, because it is very late where Alira lives. Good night, Ember. You help me feel safer. I'm so glad. Thank you for joining us.
Not sure if that's every teacher. Are teachers supposed to fill out a form describing what they keep in their pants? Or are we only treating some teachers that way based on the way that they dress? Not sure. Then there are the religious and conscientious exceptions that mean parents are demanding the right to have their children not meet people that the parents themselves don't like.
Now, this is a bit of a sticky note in the United States at the moment, because there's a lot of people who seem to believe that they can just say anything and go, oh, my religion. Even if their religion doesn't actually say anything about those things. Like, you can hold a religion without holding some of the hateful beliefs entailed by it. Like, for example, modern Christians who don't practice slavery or commit genocide or murder their children for getting drunk, or, the litany goes on and on and on. You can be a Christian without believing hateful things. And these specific hateful things, like hatred of Black people, hatred of gay people, hatred of trans people, hatred of women with autonomy, all on and on and on, are not actually in the book. There is no religious entailment to believe these things. They're just bigots. But as long as they can throw up, oh, religious objection, there's a counter for that. You say, how? Explain to me how your religion requires you to hate this one specific group of people. This religion with the Prince of Peace and Jesus's love and all that. How does that work? Because I promise they will not be able to explain the connection and in what way it's justified by their faith. The conflict comes from the word belief. When you say, I believe in God, or I believe women shouldn't have rights, you're using the word belief, but these are not the same kinds of belief. And that's the thing that gets preyed upon in these kinds of arguments.
Now, this one is an argument we've seen deployed countless times in our history against Black students and teachers, against LGBTQIA people, against non-Christians, against disabled people. It's been wrong every time it's been deployed, and it's been...
I officially love this woman because, to my knowledge, she's the first person to bring disabled people into the discourse on this, because there is so much crossover. Some of the other speakers will get to it. But yeah, this shit's important. Intersectionality includes all the intersections. The teacher herself may or may not be disabled, but the way people talk about these issues has an enormous impact on the rights and accessibility for people in other communities. We'll find out more about that later, too.
Like, it's just wrong. And finally, I see people saying how unfair it is to expect children to address their teachers by a title that the parents don't agree the teacher is entitled to. Now, anybody who's ever called Elizabeth Lizzie or Catherine Kate or Jonathan John knows that that's just pure nonsense. You call people what they ask to be called. That's not a head scratcher.
more to the point, specifically in the context of a classroom, the honorific or appellation salutation, the Mr., Mrs., Doctor, Reverend, all of these things that we apply to people. Now I've got Appalachian stuck in my head because North Carolina is along the Appalachians. It's not important. When you're in school, you call the teachers what you're told to call the teachers. This isn't a matter of agreement, it's a matter of respect for the order and the instructor. You cannot be taught by a teacher that you're actively disrespecting. How is that supposed to work? And this is one of those weird ironies with conservatism, how these same people who insist on order, authority, and discipline in every other circumstance prioritize disrespect for any minority group that they don't like over and above the system. Lick the boots unless it's that person's boots. Weird.
But okay, you can always just have your child call the teacher teacher. I'm going to end with the words of the great Oscar Hammerstein, written almost 80 years ago. He said, and I will not be singing, thank God, I will be paraphrasing. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your little ear. You've got to be taught to be afraid. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught.
Thank you. We will turn to our next.
That was well timed out. You can tell she's done this before, but also not wrong. It's probably not clear to the people who already have a strong position one way or the other in that room, but what she's talking about is indoctrination. You know, we've seen photos from, 100 years ago of little white children playing with little black children, and books and publications with those photos were banned in several parts of the US because they promote racial integration. Children don't actually hate, not in that way, not tribally. It's, as much as people talk about how it's part of human nature, it kind of isn't, because left to their own devices, kids would never develop these kinds of us versus them mentalities. It's always from aping the behavior of people around them, learning the culture from the adults, and then performing that culture.
Speaker.
This is just from last night. They don't have timestamps. I don't know if they've had a time to put in timestamps, or if they do that, whatever the case may be, but there are delays sometimes.
Joseph Deaton. Those objecting to placing a transgender teacher with pre-K to 5 children have been accused of spewing hate and discrimination. Now, I resent that, because every time I have addressed the transgender issue in schools has been to warn of a huge medical scandal that is causing grave.
So he takes issue with being called discriminatory for discriminating against a person because of what kind of person they are. You're doing the thing you're complaining that you're being accused of doing. Whatever. So medical scandal. There's a lot to unpack there. There's this idea on the far right that trans people existing is part of some giant conspiracy to get big medicine extra patients through gender affirming care. We've covered it in previous videos, but that's the basics of it. And the reason that it's happening is so that they can get, a few more surgeries or a few more prescriptions for medicine than they would otherwise get. People like this fella make it out to be this huge billion, gazillion dollar industry, but in reality, trans healthcare makes up less than 1% of the same healthcare given to cis people. We're not even an entire drop in the bucket. But from his point of view, you would hear people say something along the lines of that no scandal like this has ever been seen in human history. And there's billions and billions of dollars on the line, and all the medicine that supports gender affirming care, it's all made up because of institutional capture. And anyone who tries to tell you otherwise, they're in on the conspiracy. So the fact that every major medical organization, every pediatrics organization, every psychological organization, every endocrinology organization, every genetics organization, and on and on and on, every single one all over the world, they're all in on this conspiracy. But tell me how he's not like a flat earther saying that all the space agencies are lying to everyone for some reason. Probably money, possibly Satan. Who knows?
Harm. I wish those who identify as trans would understand that my desire is for their physical and mental well-being. To love is to will the good of others. Former head of child and adolescent psychiatry at the University of Louisville, Alan Josephson, said that you affirm the child, you love that child, but you don't affirm a harmful idea.
I'm not sure about this particular person that he's quoting from. It could well be the person is a transphobe, but the quote, insofar as it goes, isn't wrong. You affirm the child, you help the child, you don't affirm harmful ideas like this man is proposing. He's hinting at saying, no, you're not actually trans, which has very negative outcomes. We have the data that demonstrates that.
It has nothing to do with discrimination or not accepting people who are different.
Doesn't it, though? This has nothing to do with discrimination or not accepting people who are different. Yet, here he is speaking about this teacher that he does not know because of what kind of person they are. Is it not discrimination? Does he do this for every teacher that the board hires? Does he talk about how women aren't mentally competent compared to men when there's a female teacher hired? Does he talk about how Black people are inherently inferior to whites when there's an African American hired? I bet he doesn't. So in what way is this not discrimination based on difference?
Puberty blockers have adverse effects on growth such as bone density and neurological development, not to mention reproductive capacity that...
Oh, there it is. If we give the kids access to medicine, it'll diminish their reproductive capacity. And remember what Matt Walsh says, if you don't have them pregnant by 16, you've wasted your shot. So, fuck. Oh, the obsession with the reproductive capability of prepubescent children is crazy. But here we are. As for his actual claims, his medical claims, I suppose, reproductive capacity, we don't have any data to suggest there's any impact whatsoever. We have been using the same medicine on cis children who go through precocious puberty for many, many, many decades. There's no evidence of any impact on reproductive capability. As far as neurological development, bone density, so on and so forth, it's true that those things are paused as long as puberty is paused, because puberty is when those things develop at an accelerated rate. But when you unpause puberty, just like a kid with precocious puberty, they go through puberty. QED. But let's not explore the entire situation. Let's just frame it in a certain way. Now, I personally am not a fan of puberty blockers because prior to certain psychologists intervening, sticking their nose in and trying to convince everyone there's something inherently wrong with being trans kids just went directly onto the correct hormone. And this was what was done for nearly 100 years. and there were no ill effects. The puberty blockers are not for the benefit of the trans kids. They're for the adults around them to get used to the idea that they have a trans child in their life. We don't need them. And so if you're against puberty blockers, if you're saying, oh, the neurological development, oh, the bone density, I agree insofar as they're not actually necessary. If you don't like them, I don't like them. Let's get rid of them. Let's put the kids directly on the correct hormones. After all, he's about to say, studies show that the majority of kids, something like 98.5% of kids who get on puberty blockers, go on to HRT. So why not?
Cannot be made up fully later on. Cross-sex hormones result in infertility, cardiovascular problems, and cancer risks.
Oh my goodness, this man is a veritable fountain of nonsense. All right, first of all, infertility, not necessarily. There are at this point thousands of trans men who've given birth, despite years of testosterone use. Sometimes they go off of testosterone briefly to enhance their chances of getting pregnant, but sometimes they aren't even planning to get pregnant and they get pregnant. Fertility is good to fertility. Similar situation with trans women who keep their original equipment, but also you can freeze eggs and the other reproductive material. There's a bunch of other options. It doesn't necessarily impact fertility. As far as cardiac risks, and cancer risks for that matter, he's skewing the data. He may not even know the data. He could very well be repeating something that he heard Piers Morgan say. In actuality, trans people's risks for both of those things come to align the gender that they're presenting as. If you take estrogen, for example, and you develop boobies, you are at a higher risk of breast cancer than if you don't. Likewise, you're at a much lower risk of prostate issues. Conversely, trans men suddenly have a risk of prostate issues, because here's a fun fact: when you're on testosterone long enough, you start to develop prostate tissue. Neat trick, huh? But they tell you how you can't actually change those, but never mind. The point is, your risks for both cardiac issues and cancer come to align with the same numbers as the gender that you are, which is what you would expect to happen. But it's much scarier when you say, oh, you put yourself at increased risk.
Long-term studies show increased all-cause mortality. On the psychiatric,
That's another cherry pick. It's true that all-cause mortality, including being murdered, is at an elevated risk. Do you suppose taking HRT puts you at higher risk of being murdered?
psychiatric side, many papers have claimed that medical gender transition reduces suicidal ideation. But these studies are deeply flawed because they are short-term, plagued by confounding variables and huge loss to follow-up.
Mr. Mann has clearly never looked at the studies. I doubt he knows what the studies are. He's repeating what he heard from someone else. And I mean, for all we can tell, this is an AI-generated summary. And we are going to see some AI-generated fun in the speakers to come. In fact, place your bets. When a new speaker comes up, guess if they're going to go with AI or not. It'll be fun. But so if you want studies, I have a bunch linked on my website. Down there, betterthanenver.com, under the gender sci tab. TLDR, we have studies that go 40 years. How much? What do you mean short term? There are short term studies. There's also long term studies that are checking in every 2 to 5 years as they go along, but they're still going along. But we do have studies going upwards of 40 years. When he talks about people falling off, you can't make a participant continue to participate, but also, even with a lower risk of self-harm or self-deletion, there's still risk of self-harm and self-deletion. And guess what happens when you self-delete? You can't participate in the study anymore.
And rely on voluntary self-assessments, not clinical verification. To the contrary, long-term.
What does he mean by clinical verification? How are you supposed to clinically verify it? You know what? Never mind. Let's move on.
Studies show increased psychiatric problems and suicide. Socially
It's true. Trans people do experience increased psychiatric problems, almost like being hated by a large portion of society because of who you are causes increased stress or something. Who could imagine?
transitioning children and adolescents in schools psychologically condition the great majority to proceed on to medical transition to become lifelong patients, whereas
Now, there's a couple of problems there. Psychologically condition the majority. Participating, taking your medicine conditions you to take medicine. What are you talking about, bestie? Oh my goodness. But as he said, it's true that something like 98.5% of people who use puberty blockers go on to take HRT because they want HRT, and the puberty blocker is the necessary hurdle they have to deal with to get to it. Because much of our medical system is based on putting hurdles in your way on purpose. For instance, if you want to get, say, lower surgery, right? Which a lot of trans people do, but don't have access to, or don't have the funds, or whatever the case may be. But say you find you get yourself into a position where you have insurance that will actually cover it, and you find the right provider in the right network in the right hospital, and you do all the things, and then you meet with them for your consultation, and they're like, okay, well, first of all, you need to have total electrolysis. Like, there cannot be a hair below your waist. What does it have to do with anything? It's a barrier. It's gatekeeping. It's to make sure you're really serious before we will even consider you. For another factor, your BMI has to be below a certain limit. We'll say it's for surgery reasons, but we're not actually doing surgery on any relevant part of your body that might be concerned with. But never mind that. And another fun one that comes up a lot is you have to have someone who will take care of you for a minimum of 8 weeks. If you don't have someone like that in your life, sorry, no surgery for you. There are a lot of barriers like this that don't actually have anything to do with proper care, but are put there to keep people from accessing care. Puberty blockers is one of the more mild ones. You have to just deal with it until it's over. Let's see. Margie says, even if anything he's saying were true, what would the effects of gender affirming care have to do with a trans teacher's right to teach? And that is an excellent point. He can preach all the things he thinks about gender affirming care until the cows come home. But what does that have to do with this teacher?
strong majority would outgrow gender confusion if left alone. Schools.
That's another falsehood. First of all, gender confusion is a bit of a misleading phrase because he's very confused and trans kids generally aren't. Now, we may not have the language to express what's going on with us because we've been prevented from learning about these things, but our internal sense of self is very clear, even if our ability to express it lacks some nuance and some depth and some accuracy. Now, to be clear, there are some people who don't have a really strong understanding of self-identity. Most of them are cis people because they've never actually had to question it. But there are people who might be led to believe by people like this man that there's only total transition when that's not the case. And so they might actually be a non-binary person or a gender fluid person or a gender queer person or another flavor of trans person but not know that that's a thing that's available. And so they go with the next best option that they're aware exists. But that's a whole other subject.
Provide material cooperation with the above cited harms whenever a child or adolescent.
Oh, right. The other part that he mentioned, the grow out of it thing, that's based on a misleading study as well. We've talked about it before. It's on the website, et cetera. But TLDR, there was a gender clinic, I believe in Sweden. It's been a minute since I looked it up. Every gender diverse kid, every gender non-conforming kid was sent to this clinic for evaluation. Is there something wrong with you? Are you delusional? Are you demented? Are you autistic? Because why not? And upwards of 80% of them were just cis kids who are gender non-conforming, like tomboys, for example. Some of them were gay. Some of them were straight, but just didn't follow gendered guidelines. That doesn't mean they desisted from being trans. They never were trans. But why tell the truth when you can lie about a study for political points?
Is socially transitioned or otherwise encouraged to consider transition by everything from the gender identity storybooks for real little kids to now having a teacher model and normalize that for children. Thank you.
So there's the relevance. Having a teacher exist while trans will cause kids to become trans. That's his actual point. That's his premise. You know, the same way that having one cis teacher caused all the trans people to stop being trans. That's how that works, right? No? Huh.
We'll turn to our next speaker.
I'm so glad that these speakers only have 3 minutes each, because the amount of bullshit people can
Felicia
shovel
Moore.
in 3 minutes is quite a lot. Now, you may have noticed that the runtime on this video is much longer than I'm planning to go.
Allen or
Good news. This part of it
we'll
only
turn
lasts
to
for
Janet,
maybe a third of the video.
Peterson.
So we hopefully should be able to get through it. Maybe. We'll find out. We'll find out together, folks. Live broadcasting. My goodness, I didn't prepare for such a long interlude.
Hi, Janet Peterson. I'm a retired kindergarten through second grade teacher from right here in Wake County. I'm also with the Pavement Education Project. The Board of Education elections are nonpartisan. There were no D's or R's when your names appeared on the ballot. However, when we come to this meeting or we watch a meeting, some board members habitually remind us of their political preferences, often
Wait. People who ran without making a big deal out of their political leanings still have political leanings? You mean these people are people? Shocking.
blaming the legislature for the lack of funds, condemning legislation meant to ensure safety, protect children, secure parental rights, and improve the quality of education. Today, it was good to hear the school board working hard on making cuts needed to balance the budget. I heard one member say something along the lines of this: the closer the cuts get to the classroom, the less she wanted to support it. And that's how it should be. On another subject.
Agree. But another thing I was happy to hear today is that STS dropped by to gift 10 memberships. Thank you so much, STS. Those went to STS. Hey, shot yourself. Very nice. Off the Chain Atheist, My Unfinished Sock, Objective Ethics. My monitor's terrible, folks. Bear with me a moment here. That doesn't make it any better. Right Vekel 137. My apologies if I said that wrong. Warlock And Mike 2039, congratulations, folks. Enjoy all the fun custom emojis and other various perks, including members-only content, and there's a bunch. Oh, there are more. Okay, it took a minute. Sarah Quell, fantastic. Level your minds. And Karina Todd, again, my apologies. Even with my glasses, this monitor is still terrible. But thank you so much, STS.
Parents at Middle Creek Elementary were shocked about a significant change that affects every child at that school. They were not part of any real conversation, as would be expected if there was a partnership between parents and school personnel.
Do you imagine that the school would consult parents on every hire? Why would they do that, ma'am?
Required in State Statute 115C 76.20 and the Parents' Bill of Rights. Parents are telling us that their kids come.
Okay, before she moves on, State Statute 115C-76.20. What is she talking about? Well, I was going to look it up, didn't you? Because that's what we do here. So this is part 3 of the parental involvement in public school units, part of the Parents' Bill of Rights package passed by the North Carolina State Legislature. The actual text of the bill says, the General Assembly finds that parental involvement and empowerment is fundamental to the successful education of all students. To strengthen partnerships among parents and school personnel, public school units and all public school unit personnel shall fully support and cooperate in implementing a well-planned, inclusive, and comprehensive program to assist parents and families in effectively participating in their child's education. To ensure active engagement and timely provision of information that parents can use to improve success for their child, public school units shall comply with the requirements of this part to do all of the following. 1, inform the parents of their legal rights and responsibilities with regards to their child's education. 2, provide a parent's guide for student achievement annually to parents to provide information parents need to know about their child's educational progress and how they can help their child succeed in school. 3, develop policies to effectively involve parents in schools and their child's education. That's it. That's what it says. The schools have to produce guides to inform the parents of their specific responsibilities and ways they can participate for their child. It does not say that the school has to hold a meeting to justify the hiring of any particular staff member or every staff member or whatever. I don't know if she doesn't know what the law says, or if she's being deceptive about what the law says, or if she's reading off ChatGPT, which it would be a miracle if it pulled the right law for a change, but I mean, that isn't actually the right law. But whatever, it isn't what she's making it out to be, is the point.
I'm upset, confused, and uncomfortable about something that is happening at school. Parents shouldn't have to find out after the fact and piece together what happened at school. To be clear,
that's true in a general sense, but remember, you're talking about a teacher got hired.
This is not about attacking any teacher personally. Most educators.
It's not about any teacher personally. I'm only bringing this up now that there's a political uproar about a teacher being a trans person, but it's not about any teacher personally.
Educators show up and work to teach their students without making any big deal or public spectacle. We agree teachers deserve respect. But when a teacher's obvious lifestyle choices impact the school environment, violate family, religious, and personal beliefs, then parents.
Wait. You had me at obvious lifestyle choices. The fuck do you say? But the key, violate parents' religious and personal beliefs. So we're not even completely hiding behind Jesus's skirts. We're just saying my personal beliefs. That's discrimination, bestie. That's prejudice. That's bigotry. What are you? Your existing violates my personal beliefs. Mighty entitled, aren't we?
Should have advance notice and the option to opt out. This
It's not about any teacher in particular, not individually, but parents should receive advance notice and the option to opt out based on their personal belief. Well, if I had a personal belief that mathematics was of the devil, I should have the right to opt my child out of math class. Come on now. Come the fuck on now. Like, you cannot be serious. Be so for real, man.
is about transparency. When parents express concern, they are not villains. They aren't hating on the teacher. They're loving, protecting, and concerned about children's well-being.
Are they, though? Like, it's easy to say, and they definitely say that, but are they, though? Because, again, these people are here because they got word from a political ideologue that there was a trans teacher. They're not here talking about the cutting to the sports programs or the fact that there is a music teacher, praise the Jeebus. They're here because political influences told them this is wrong and harmful and go speak out against it. Come on, get out of here.
The hiring of a visibly transgender instructor for this elementary school appears to be an intentional move. The principal completed her doctorate dissertation on equity-focused school improvement in Wake County schools. It appears she
So this is another one of those talking points that people have been given by others. Apparently, the principal of the school has a doctorate. Cool. And her doctorate happens to be in DEI, or at least her dissertation was on the subject of DEI. I'm sure it's actually in education or something along those lines. And as it turns out, children who are exposed to a more diverse range of human experiences tend to do better as students. Because when you broaden your horizons with experiences, with meeting other kinds of people, it knocks down the walls of bigotry. And then you can learn more easily. But that's a long topic for another time.
will be changing the role of principal from managing a school to actively shaping culture, challenging traditional practices, and promoting ideas about equity, inclusion, and gender.
How dare she promote equity and inclusion in a school? Now, to be clear, that actually is against North Carolina state law, because of course it is. We can't have inclusion in our schools. Like, the United States is beyond parity, folks. But whatever. This is just casting aspersions. It's just making accusations. Oh, she's not administering. She's engaging in cultural engineering. Because she hired a person who happened, I don't even know if she had a say in hiring. Like, it varies from district to district. Some places around where I live, the Board of Education decides who gets hired. The principals are only administrators. But never mind that. She's accusing this person she doesn't know based on a circumstantial piece of evidence she's only aware of because it was brought up in the context of a political controversy of doing the thing she's doing herself. This is straight up projection, all kinds of motivated reasoning, and as a retired teacher, she should know better. Trying to keep everyone but the white men out is cultural engineering, ma'am.
This is something we will be seeing more of in Wake County elementary schools. Parents should not have to wonder whether a school's priorities
are
driven by
That
politics.
is your time. Thank you. We will now turn to the next speaker, Caitlin Daly. All right. Marsha P. Johnson.
As you can see, there's a few people didn't show up, but a few people definitely put joke names on the speaker list. And because once again, the board doesn't actually have any trans education because they don't actually teach anything about trans history in public schools. They have no idea who Marsha P. Johnson is either. For those of you who may not be aware, she was the Black trans woman who was famous for her involvement in the Stonewall Uprising in 1969, which is the reason we have gay rights today. She was a trans woman who was instrumental in securing gay rights because this shit is all intersectional. But I digress.
Colette Emrich. Oh, I'm sorry. Miss, oh, yes, sorry, I called your name. I guess you didn't hear me.
I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Well, welcome.
Thank you. In the fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes, a con man convinces the king that he has made some magnificent clothing that is invisible to those that are incompetent or foolish.
I find it fascinating that when people trot out this particular fable, they present it as if no one in the room had ever heard it before.
Subjects see the king, the naked king, parading down the town, but no one speaks.
She's leaving out some key elements of the story here, but never mind.
Out of fear of ridicule and social punishment. The coerced subjects conform under pressure and perpetuate a collective lie. Now imagine a modern version of that tale in our schools.
Yes, let's imagine a modern version of a whole bunch of people applying social pressure to try to change the reality of something to conform with their preferred beliefs. What could this possibly be?
Instead of clothing, the subject is biological sex, and the issue is compelled speech. In this scenario, students and teachers and parents are expected to assent that a person's biological sex is changed and to use.
So this is a common thing. It's an easy misunderstanding, but because the majority of people who are told to be scared of trans people never learn anything more than that first thing they're told about trans people aren't, first of all, no one is saying that people are changing sex. I realize that lower surgery used to be called a sex change, but we didn't pick the damn name. Gender and sex are not the same thing. If our schools were able to do their damn jobs instead of having meetings like this constantly, the adults would be better educated than this. But this is a thing that conservatives like to say, is, oh, the trans people are pretending sex doesn't exist. If that were true, we wouldn't bother to transition, would we? Because it would be completely pointless.
Gender-affirming pronouns that may conflict with logic and conscience. The goal may be respect, and that's important.
What do you mean logic and conscience? I mean, as far as conscience, do you mean like ethics? Because being respectful to people is baseline ethical behavior. So what do you mean? And as far as logic, how does logic figure, like, you need to explain that one to me, ma'am. You can't just throw logic out there the way you throw out religious beliefs, as if that meant something in this conversation.
Important. But respect should not require people to surrender their conscience or affirm something they believe is untrue.
No one is asking you to affirm something that you believe is untrue, any more than anyone asked you to affirm that Black people are the equal of whites when there started to be Black teachers. Just stay the fuck out of the way and keep your bigotry to yourself. Keep your ignorance at home.
There are 4 serious issues I'd like to share. First, that compelled speech violates the First Amendment.
Kind of so on that one. But is there compelled speech? To an extent, in schools, a student's use of the First Amendment is slightly limited. Like, for example, you're compelled not to speak in the middle of a lecture. You will get in trouble if you make a disturbance while a lecturer is lecturing. That's disrupting the classroom. That's interfering with the other students' learning. That's a very dick thing to do. So, yeah, your speech can be limited as a student. As far as compelled speech, talk to me about how every school in this country forced kids to do the Pledge of Allegiance every single morning. For those of you who grew up in the United States, you should know there's only 2 countries on earth that do that, that make children swear fealty to a symbol of the nation every freaking morning. It's the United States and North Korea. Other places don't do that because it's fucking crazy.
And is as declared by the Supreme Court, coerced speech puts public schools in serious legal jeopardy. Second, compelled.
Oh, she's concerned for the school's liability. Why didn't I see it before? It's not like firing someone because of what kind of person they are might not put the school in any kind of liability. Oh, goodness.
Speech erodes conscience. When children learn that they must say what the authorities demand rather than what they honestly believe, conformity replaces conviction and makes children easily manipulated. Education should.
What are you talking about? I agree, indoctrinating children is wrong. That's why, in a broad sense, there are certain things that have to be indoctrinated, like the way our voting system works. Like, that's what that means, to be brought into the function of the system. But there's a lot of shit that should be kept away from kids, like religion, for instance. If you want to make a decision to go believe in a supernatural entity when you achieve adulthood and can make a decision for yourself, that's fine and dandy. That's your right to do. But dragging kids into this crazy blood cult, it's not great. No.
Build and develop moral courage, not teach children to fear speaking honestly, or to.
It's interesting. So many of these speakers go on and on about how the kids are being traumatized and the kids are in an uproar. But remember, there were 2 student speakers and neither one gave a shit about this issue. They were talking about, like, sports team allowances for absences on test days and things. You know, stuff kids actually care about in regards to their school districts.
To leave them defenseless against manipulation. The third concern is compelled speech can divide a community. Instead of allowing people to disagree respectfully, it turns language into a test of social acceptance and stirs up distrust. And
wait, do you mean culture war bullshit can be divisive? Almost like that's the point? Huh.
fourth, compelled speech undermines critical thinking. Students must be allowed to ask questions, examine evidence, disagree.
She is not up here talking about critical thinking. Oh my goodness. Now, obviously, I don't know this person. We only get 3 minutes of her time. It's what she has chosen to say, but she has demonstrated no capability for critical thinking in this entire thing. She is just parroting wrong talking points she got from a politically motivated source. If she had critical thinking, she would not be saying these things. She may not agree with one side or the other, but she wouldn't be just repeating shit that she'd heard somewhere. My goodness.
agree without being branded disrespectful. Biological understanding must not be reframed as hate speech. When honest discussion is discouraged, distortion and errors gain.
Once again, what hate speech? What are we like? She's up here. This is one of those. If you leave an insult lying on the ground, the bigot will come along and take ownership of it, right? What is she talking about? There is a teacher who may be trans who brought up hate speech. She's defending herself from an accusation no one has made. And in that way is kind of telling on herself.
Traction.
Thank you. All right, we will turn to Colette Emmerich. Bless you.
It's on here.
Adventures.
Good evening. I've been a Wake County public school mom since 2001. If you count all the years my kids have attended public school in this district, it's 35. I've watched dozens of teachers and principals leave North Carolina for the taxes and pay rate Texas offered them. I've watched busing change the demographics, scores, and focus of our school. I've watched science class get cut in favor of social and emotional class. I've watched no
social and emotional class. I mean, it would be great if there were like a civics class in schools like there used to be many, many years ago, before my time even. But what do you mean, ma'am? It would also be wonderful if there were like an emotional wellness class, because look at all these adults with no ability to emotionally regulate. They're uneducated, they're ignorant, they're biased to the extreme, every kind of motivated reasoning, and it's all based on emotional immaturity. This is the product of the current system. Surely we can do better. We used to do better.
No Child Left Behind morph into a no.
Make education great again? I'm not running for office, don't you dare.
No fail and no discipline policy. I've watched teacher support and parental confidence plunge down the toilet. My son loves the military. Today, he's a proud soldier in the Special Forces. At 7 years old, he obsessed over minute Russian tank details.
Today's speech is brought to you by anecdotes. It's one anecdote and then another anecdote. Cool story, bro.
And the evolution of guns. I bought him several books on the topic because he couldn't find books about guns in the elementary school library.
He couldn't find books about guns in the elementary school library. Well, my stars and garters, how dare. Let's talk about compelled speech some more. Why do you suppose there might not be guns books in the elementary school library, ma'am? Why do you... That's not to say they're banned necessarily, but elementary school libraries, they don't try to be comprehensive, right? Like there's no critical race theory books in there. There's rare that you'll even find a mention of Shakespeare, let alone the complete works. It's because books are selected because they're age appropriate for kids in that age range. They don't just put every book in there the way they try to do with public libraries. But I don't expect this woman to be very familiar with libraries, TBH.
That makes a lot of sense. Why would he? That is my responsibility as a parent. There are lots of families that have their own point of view on the subject. It is their prerogative to teach their children the values they hold true, and I have nothing but respect for that. It is the greatest experience of American freedom. But I've watched books about gender and sexual identity be put on the shelves of elementary school libraries. And
there's the issue. Why are we teaching kids about things that might be relevant to them and not teaching them about guns? Why would we do that? My goodness.
Now the hire of a non-binary music teacher in our school who chooses to identify as a woman when teaching.
I'm curious because every one of these people has man in a dress in their heads right now. But if this teacher is non-binary, but is presenting as a woman while teaching, it seems kind of like this is an AFAB person presenting as their natal gender specifically because of these people. This person is already bent over backwards to accommodate their feelings when they don't have to, and it's still not enough, because just existing, even presenting as their birth gender, is not enough for these people.
The teachers fight to express themselves freely in a classroom over parents' rights to express their concerns. Many are fearful to send their children to school and to let their voice be heard because of extremist retaliation on either side. I am frankly terrified to be standing here right now.
Oh, the performativeness. I wonder how many rehearsals this took. Place your bets in the comments. We won't get an answer, but it'll still be fun to speculate. Extremists. Like the teacher who wants to just teach music. Extremists.
My daughter's cheer coaches are all over the spectrum of gender identity and sexual orientation. They are gifted teachers with endless patience, and I'm so grateful that they dedicate themselves to the success of young athletes. They live full, free, and fabulous lives. I love them like family. They are role models both professionally and of self-expression with respect.
Okay, so the cheer coaches are every flavor of LGBT, and it's wonderful. And she says it's good for her children to be exposed to this diversity of people. I wonder why she says that in this context, but not with regards to a music teacher in an elementary school who doesn't even present as her gender, their gender, while teaching. Weird.
Respect for the widely varying values, the families they serve, and the highly impressionistic minds of the children they coach. I wish I could say the same for Wake County Public Schools. Oh, you have school choice. What choice? Leave the school, the teachers and friends that have been an important part of my children's lives, get on a long charter waiting list, take my vouchers and hope they cover private tuition, requests to transfer to our traditional assignments have been flatly denied. Conversation and solution seeking has been stonewalled by the principal. So my choice.
What conversation and solution seeking? What solution are you looking for that's been stonewalled by the principal? The non-binary teacher isn't even presenting as non-binary. What do you want exactly? If not, fire them. And of course the principal's going to stonewall that because that's fucking insane.
Seems to be homeschool. When I unenroll my children, it's not because I'm a stupid, narrow-minded conservative bigot that hates the music teacher. When I unenroll, it's because our children are confused. They're asking questions about advanced human topics before they even know what sex is.
Time. We'll turn to the next speaker.
Our children are asking questions and it makes me uncomfortable. This is why there's books about sex ed in elementary school libraries, ma'am. Because there's parents like you that are very uncomfortable telling your kids even the first thing about sex. But also, being a trans person is not inherently sexual. I understand as a woman in American society, particularly in a conservative region, it might be your lived experience that being a woman means you are a sex object. From the very up. I get that. But surely from that experience, you can understand that isn't right. People existing is not inherently sexual, nor should it be.
Speaker Elizabeth Hewitt. Is Elizabeth in the room?
My name is Liz Hewitt. I'd like to start my comment with an apology for its necessity. There are existential issues around education, and quite frankly, I wish I had the ability to focus on them. I've often heard the term parental rights thrown around by organizations and individuals who have been supporting a gender dress code, and I often wonder, where were these
Now, the gender dress code thing, that was brought up by this local elected official who's in a very tight race, and so blew this issue up. Again, the teacher was hired in June or July, but it's only now coming to light because this elected official needs a distraction. And in order to maximize the distraction, she didn't just point out that there's a non-binary teacher in this elementary school. She proposed a gender-based dress code, which incidentally is extremely illegal. But when does that ever stop a conservative?
organizations and individuals when the board proposed to cut $18 million from the budget? Why were they not fighting for parents' rights of a fully funded school? With a $17 million budget shortfall, delayed raises for staff, and new proposed cuts, why are people so worried about a sex-based dress code? Who does this distraction benefit? But as this continues to be an issue, I will advocate for what's important: students. 3.3% of U.S. youth are transgender, according to the Williams Institute. And as mentioned in my last comment, research shows 40% of trans youth report at least one suicide attempt, with one factor of this rate being students not feeling school belonging. While parents
The statistics are broadly correct. And again, website betterthanumber.com. All the shit is available for you to peruse. I put it up there for you to peruse. But one caveat, that 41% rate that's reported by the US Transgender Survey is survivors. It's not the people who attempted. It's the people who attempted and survived. Because there's a survivorship bias built in. The people who did not survive can't answer the survey.
Parents might assume their student is not transgender. They have a 3 in 100 chance that they are, and if so, a very real chance of losing them. This is why it's important to work to keep trans educators. According to Dr. Posner in her dissertation, The Importance of Mirrors, Understanding the Impact of Out-Queer Teachers and Administrators on LGBTQ+ Students, on page 119, findings from this research show how impactful it is for queer students to have access to queer educators. They give students
This person came prepared. I'm impressed.
a sense of normalcy, feeling seen, and understanding. Posner also detailed that some students in the research had thoughts about suicide, but having access to queer educators offered them hope for a positive future. I'm a proud NC public school product. I'm also transgender. While I'm grateful to many teachers, I grew up without any trans role models. I was raised in the idealized environment for proponents of a sex-based dress code. I had a nuclear family. I went to church every Sunday, and I never met a trans adult. I first learned about transgender people, ironically, because of the 2016 NC bathroom bans in my junior year of high school. This
Not the chickens coming home to roost, exactly like now, this channel hasn't existed since 2016, but I've been around for a while, right? Like I was I was doing a radio show when Barack Obama ran for office for the first time. I was part of the campaign, but we knew in 2016 that when North Carolina made a big deal out of bathrooms, it was going to make a mountain out of a molehill. It wasn't even a molehill at the time, but holy shit, North Carolina, you would think they learned their lesson then, but apparently not. Perhaps it's an entirely new crop of elected officials who are in office. But people might recall they passed the first bathroom ban mere months after the Supreme Court rendered marriage equality a right under the Constitution. And so the conservatives needed a new wedge issue. So they passed this bathroom ban, and immediately people started leaving the state. Businesses started taking their business elsewhere. Sporting events canceled. There was a huge economic boycott, and the state lost billions. And I mean billions in a time when that meant something That'd be, the equivalent of a quadrillion zillion dollars today after all this inflation. Thanks, Trump. Obviously, they repealed it. But the buzz it stirred up, that taught a whole lot of people that trans people existed. It was the Streisand effect, I suppose you might say.
Finally gave me the language and framework to understand transgender. While I'm grateful to many teachers, I grew up without any trans role models. I was raised in the idealized environment for proponents of a sex-based dress code. I had a nuclear family. I went to church every Sunday, and I never met a trans adult. I first learned about transgender people, ironically, because of the 2016 NC bathroom bans in my junior year of high school. This
Obviously, the play of that glitched a bit.
Finally gave me the language and framework to understand my emotions, why I was miserable, why I would self-harm, and why I'd wanted to kill myself since I started puberty. But then I noticed I'd never seen a trans adult, especially not in any position of professionalism. This made me believe I wasn't wanted, and that I had to choose to stay closeted and miserable to have a good life. I tried this for years before realizing it would lead to my early death. Now I've been transitioning for about 2 years, and I'm surrounded by loving friends and family, and I'm so grateful I survived. But I don't want other young trans people to go through the pain I did. The lives of our trans students are at stake if we move to rob them from ever being able to see themselves. It is an embarrassment that while our schools continue to be underfunded and plundered by billionaires for tax breaks and ed tech profits, I have to spend time advocating not to discriminate against teachers based on identity if they want to be called Mr. or Mrs., and if that aligns with what's in their pants. I hope in the near future, people on all sides of the issue get to drop this deadly culture war time waste and accept their neighbors so we can advocate for what matters, and that the vitriol that's been directed at trans educators will instead be spent protecting public education for the working class that corporations and billionaires want to steal from us. Thank you for your time.
Nailed it. Like, my goodness. That was very, very well put. I wouldn't be so diplomatic, obviously. Y'all know me. But definitely very well played. Like, pay attention to the real problems, not the distractions, not the keys jingling from the players up on high who are making you dance like puppets on a string. The points are as not directly relevant as all the other speakers, insofar as none of that was actually about the teacher, but at least it was tangentially relevant in that they were making a case that simply having a trans teacher on staff is itself an asset, and not just for LGBT kids, although definitely that, because that person wasn't wrong. Growing up not seeing anyone like you in a professional capacity around you, in fact, seeing only people who are like you on the Jerry Springer show depicted as freaks to be laughed at and mocked by the crowd and disowned by their parents, it doesn't exactly inspire you with hope for any kind of future, you know?
We'll turn our next speaker, Susan Book. And followed by Ms. Book, Aaron Driver will be our next speaker.
Yeah, that print's too small for us to read back there. Hello, I'm Susan Book. I'm a parent advocate. I debated with myself whether it was wise to stand and speak today. Do
you ever debate with yourself, just for practice? I'm being silly. My pain meds are starting to work.
Been on the front lines of things like culture wars before, but I believe that standing up for others is important. I believe in standing in solidarity with those who merely wish to exist in peace is important to our community. What gets me every time these conversations come up is that they steal from us the time and energy to get real work done. Today, I see that, you might be looking at contracts for special education transportation. This needs to weigh heavy on all our board and staff. I get called yearly by community members and even reporters about getting disabled children back and forth to school in a timely and safe manner. I once was asked how long this issue has existed, and as my own son enters his junior year, I could say as long as we've all been part of Wake County Public Schools.
It's true, a lot of schools, I don't know about Wake County specifically, but in a lot of schools, access for disabled kids is difficult. My son isn't even disabled, but he was part of a special education program because he was nonverbal for a large part of his childhood, that they had certain policies and certain protocols. And so while his older sibling took the regular school bus, he had to ride what they call the short bus, which is the disabled access bus, because it has a wheelchair lift attached so the disabled kids can get on. And that's fine. It didn't hurt him to be around the disabled kids. The reason I bring it up is because he didn't actually have to be on that bus. His presence was making the bus take an extra stop, was potentially taking a seat away from another kid who did need to be there. Because while he himself had verbal communication issues, which bus he was on didn't make that any better. And more to the point, on the regular school bus, he would have been with his older sibling. On most days, obviously kids get sick from time to time, but also there's a matter of routine. Once the procedure is established, it's easier for him to do, and so on and so forth. The reason it went down the way it did was because compliance with policy. Because people aren't able to make rational decisions on their own, they have to comply with policy. And this is one of the big issues that's become a problem in our bureaucratic systems here in the US and probably elsewhere as well, where everything has to have a policy and there can never be exceptions to the policy, even when it doesn't make sense. And as a result, a lot of disabled kids have difficulty accessing education, even when there's policies that are nominally intended to make access easier for them, like having buses with wheelchair lifts for the kids who need that. That makes sense. But making every student with any kind of disability ride that same bus, that doesn't always make sense, you know? And I should be clear, things are a lot better now than they used to be. The solution for disabled kids when I was in primary school was too bad.
What parents want is clear. We want competence. We don't want services after the fact to make up for mistakes. It's generally the only recourse we actually get, by the way. We just want the confidence that kids with disabilities will get to school on time and home on time and safely. That shouldn't be too much to ask. So today, I'm actually not asking. I'm demanding we do better. This is just the tip of the iceberg of special education issues. We need to think systematically and beyond the individual. Do our attendance policies or exemptions actually help quell anxiety? Can we make our schools a more welcoming place for neurodivergent students? And how do we do that? It can't all be done in an IEP. So I ask you to be smart. Look at.
Again, intersectionality is important. Do we care about neurodivergent kids? Do we care about kids? Do we care about the actual learning or just getting the job done? And what message are we sending with all the different things we do? Does a kid worried about being accepted because of a learning disability maybe benefit from seeing teachers who are a little different? Even if it's a different kind of difference. Knowing that different people are allowed to exist in society, they see that maybe there's a place for them too.
The issues and protect all our most vulnerable, whether they be a teacher or a student. Thank you.
Aaron Driver.
Aaron Driver is the local anti-trans mini influencer pseudo-celebrity type.
My name is Aaron Driver. I have 3 small children at Middle Creek Elementary, and I'm with Middle Creek Parental Rights. For years, people questioned certain institutional orthodoxies, or people who questioned them, We're intimidated into believing that disagreement itself is a defect of character. We got all kinds of newspeak vocab for policing dissent. Not to
It's so wild when the authoritarians reference 1984. Like, bestie, come on now. We know you didn't read it, and we know your higher-ups are using it as a freaking handbook. So what are you playing at here?
answer the argument, but to morally classify the person making it. Misgendering, dead naming, cisnormativity, heteronormative bigotry, transphobic. It worked pretty well around 2016, and it worked really well in 2020. But its shelf life is expired. Ordinary Americans are remembering something basic that we can and should.
Ordinary Americans, the normal gays. I mean, the normal straights. The othering, the team spirit. This is the divisiveness that the other speakers were talking about.
Just say things. Things like, I don't subscribe to gender theory. I'm a Christian and a faithful believer in Jesus Christ, and in fact, I claim religious exemption from it for myself.
I mean, you can say those things. You can say, I don't believe other kinds of people exist. You can say, I don't believe women should be able to vote. You can say, I don't believe black people should be on this continent. You can say lots of things. The things you choose to say can be emblematic of your values. And it's those values, the things that you're trying to enact into the world, that determine whether or not you're a good or bad person in the context of social ethics. You can say those things, but there's consequences to the things you say. People are going to look at you a little bit differently when you start burning crosses on people's lawns. They're not going to penalize you for disagreeing. They're going to see you differently, bestie.
And for my family. I reject critical theory, postmodern progressivism, and especially in elementary education. Oh.
I mean, good for you, but there's no critical theory or postmodern progressivism in elementary schools. Come on now.
And I don't subscribe to Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed either. So some of you might be wondering why this
What the hell is... Okay. I don't know what the hell ChatGPT fed him, but pedagogy of the oppressed. That sounds like an impressive collection of words. I'm not familiar. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe we'll look it up one of these days. But as far as anyone in that audience can tell, he's just saying words, which I guess was his point the entire time. You can just say things, which I agree. That's what conservatives have been doing for years, is just saying things like, I don't agree with your right to exist because I believe in Jesus. The fuck does that have to do with anything? I don't agree with your right to be an asshole because I believe in pancakes. Those are not connected propositions.
A normative bourgeois patriarchal dad actor is talking about 1960s communist literature. Well, it's because a lot of us have now read our new principal Sarah Stevens' UNC dissertation, where she talks about disrupting systems and upending institutional power. But what happened?
Once again, the principal's dissertation was trotted out as part of this controversy because, to a person with motivated reasoning, with a bias that they're trying to confirm, any piece that seems to fit the narrative they're constructing suddenly becomes gospel. It's wild how predictable this bullshit is. It's almost like people weren't educated on any of these things.
Happens when your ideology becomes the one in power. When parents' beliefs becomes the ones you think need disrupting. Who's abusing institutional power then? And what exactly needs...
This is this us versus them bullshit. He starts out by saying that a person should be allowed to speak without being demonized for disagreement, but then he proposes a system where instead of trying to resolve our differences and come to understand each other and try to arrive at something more closely approximating what's true and what's best for the kids, it's simply a matter of, I'm right and I will use power against you. until you use yours against me, and then when the tables turn, I'll get you back. It's revenge-based tribal bullshit, not an interest in learning, growing, doing better, being less wrong, or giving a single fuck what's best for the kids.
Needed disrupting at Middle Creek? Was it the reading, the writing, or the math? First week of school, Stephen surprised parents by placing their 5-year-olds in the custody of a trans teacher, perhaps testing a DEI hiring loophole under Senate Bill 227, now Session Law 2026-20. And
hey, another legal reference. Good thing I looked that one up too. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this one, this is, shoot, where did I put it? Where did I put it? It's fine. In summary, I put the actual bill somewhere. It's easy enough to look up. It's SL 2026-2. But in summary, it applies to public school units in North Carolina, including students, teachers, administrators, and school employees. It bars compelling students or staff to affirm or profess beliefs in specific discriminatory practices or divisive concepts. Now, what it's talking about specifically is DEI and critical race theory, because that was the hot topic earlier this year and into last year and so on and so forth. And in fact, the next point is a DEI office ban. It prohibits public school units from maintaining an office or designated unit named or referred to as diversity, equity, and inclusion, or promoting those concepts. So we will have no diversity in our schools. We will have no inclusion, or more specifically, we won't have an office dealing with those things specifically. Staffing restrictions, and this is the part that I'm sure he's hinting at, but doesn't actually understand because he hasn't read it. It forbids employing or assigning personnel whose specific duties include the promotion of the defined divisive concepts or discriminatory practices. And of course, it comes into effect June 24th, 2026. So what he's saying is that by hiring a trans teacher, they're trying to exploit a DEI loophole in this law because there isn't anyone actually promoting DEI. That's prohibited. But by having a person exist that's somehow exploiting a loophole in the anti-DEI law, it might surprise him to know the person he's mad about is in fact a music teacher, not a cultural thinking instructor.
if the objective was to purge the school of what its leadership considers unorthodoxy, then this controversy has become the acid test. Dissenting families will either acquiesce or leave. Problem solved.
What there's a teacher who happens to be trans. You're manufacturing a controversy, bestie.
Parents shouldn't have to pass an ideological test to participate in public education.
Technically true. Parents shouldn't have to pass an ideological test, and their kids certainly shouldn't have to have their parents pass an ideological test to participate in public education. But here's the thing. People existing should not be an ideological test. If your ideology compels you to reject people existing, your ideology is way the fuck beyond the pale and in violation of the social contract. And that is a problem that can abrogate your right to participate, bestie.
Oh, here's what our detractors are telling us, by the way. You don't support school hiring a trans teacher? Maybe public school isn't for you or your family. Maybe homeschool.
Or maybe it's none of your fucking business. Maybe that. Like there isn't a love it or leave, maybe it's not your business.
Maybe private school. That's right. Maybe pay taxes into the school system and then pay again to escape from it. Point is, parents, not administrators, not academics, not social justice activists, remain the primary moral authority in the lives of their children. And I'm not surrendering the formation of my children to people who think my family, our traditions, and moral convictions are something they're obligated to disrupt. God entrusted their upbringing to us, not over-educated administrators with late-stage luxury.
Oh, I wish Mark could have seen this, but maybe Mark is still lurking. I saw Mark earlier. But you're too educated. That's your problem. How dare you learn things, especially school administrators learning how to administrate schools, educators learning how to educate. We can't have that. Holy shit.
Luxury beliefs. And that's not hatred, that's fatherhood.
That's not hatred, that's fatherhood. Talk about an ideology. There's a whole lot of people in this room whose children are going to turn 18 and never speak to them again. Hey, fun fact, in the southern United States, I don't know the stats for North Carolina off the top of my head, but in Tennessee, right next door, 40% of homeless people, the entire homeless population, are LGBT youth who are disowned by their families. Maybe having a trans teacher would be good for the parents too.
All right. Excuse me. Our next. All right. I'm trying not to use the gavel. We'll maintain decorum. I don't need assistance. I got this, but we'll maintain decorum. And if it gets out, I have no problem using the gavel or using one of these deputies to do what they need to do. So we will proceed as listed. The next speaker is Ashley Reynolds. If Ashley Reynolds is not in the building, we will move to, gotcha, I'll just call them out since we're having difficulty seeing it on the screen. I apologize. Brittany.
I do relate with people having difficulty seeing things on screens. But c'est la vie. We can only hear what's coming through the microphones, and of course the applause when it rises to the level the microphones pick it up. But apparently they get rowdy at a couple of points. I can't imagine why.
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, my name is Brittany Prochnow. I am a licensed clinical social worker and runner of the community. I'm representing 588 Wake County residents who signed a petition for the Wake County School Board to open school tracks for public use and recreation.
Okay. She has an actual relevant to the school board point. She's a runner. Many people in the community want to use the school tracks to run on because they just sit there unused when school isn't in session. She wants to talk about that. It's fantastic. We love it, but it's not what we're here for, so I'm going to skip her. Like I said, there's a few people who actually have something legitimate to say.
Hi, I'm Becky Lou Hobbs, and I'm here tonight regarding the situation involving the music teacher at Middle Creek Elementary School. I want to be very clear. This is not about attacking an individual teacher.
Now, this is the woman who is sitting next to the Moms for Liberty woman. Guilt by association, perhaps, but I'm sus right out the gate.
It's about the responsibility of the school system to protect students, respect parents, follow North Carolina law, and maintain appropriate boundaries in the classroom. First,
cool. We don't have a disagreement here, so why are you speaking?
First, I've spoken to several parents regarding the situation. These children are being told to address a male teacher as female.
That's an assumption, because once again, none of these people have any information about this teacher's identity. They know that the teacher presents as female while teaching, but is non-binary. That's it. So it sounds an awful lot like, because why would a non-binary AMAB person present as femme while teaching? That doesn't make any damn sense. It sounds a lot more like, and again, I don't know either, but the reasonable, rational thing to tentatively conclude is that this is an AFAB non-binary person. But when these kinds of people hear trans, they think man in a dress. The teacher is doing their best to comply with the expectations of the bigots to minimize controversy. And there's going to be a lot of egg on their faces when the school year really gets going and it becomes they start touring school looking for the trans teacher and can't find one. Because when they're teaching, they present as femme.
This is compelled speech and raises legitimate concerns. The Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld compelled speech violates the First Amendment. By allowing this teacher and administration to compel speech,
citation needed. It's true there are cases where that's happened, but it's also true that the Supreme Court has held that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. There are times when speech is rightly limited.
County Schools is placing itself at significant legal risk and potentially exposing taxpayers to the cost of that litigation. Second, the situation forces the
if you hire a person of a minority that we don't like, we will sue you, and then you will lose your next election because of all the money that you cost the taxpayers. This is bullying tactics, and they did exactly the same thing with gay teachers 20 years ago, and they did exactly the same thing with black teachers 40 years ago, and they did exactly the same thing with women teachers 80 years ago. They don't have a different move. They do not learn. They just move the bigotry to the next group.
Introduction of gender identity issues into an elementary classroom. North Carolina law is very clear that gender identity, sexual activity, and sexuality shall not be provided to students in kindergarten through 4th grade. But that
good thing this person is a music teacher, where they very rarely talk about sex or gender identity.
Restriction applies regardless of whether that information comes from school personnel or a third party. So my question for the board is straightforward. What exactly are these students being told? And does this really comply with North Carolina law?
The speaker raises an interesting point, because if it isn't just staff who are prohibited from bringing up discussions about gender identity in front of students, and all of these people making a big deal out of this are in violation of the law that they're talking about, because they brought it up.
Third, parents have raised concerns and have requested alternatives for their children. To date, those concerns appear to have been ignored.
What concerns? Your concern is there is a trans person. Just like your concern is there's a black person. Like, that's not a concern. That's not a legitimate thing. Of course you're being ignored. That's fucking stupid.
And dismissed by the administration. North Carolina statute requires accommodations to be made when a student's religious beliefs are affected.
What way are a person's religious beliefs, and a student's religious beliefs no less, affected by a music teacher being anything? Being trans, being woman, being a minority? Oh, heaven forbid if we find out she's Asian or Jewish.
The law also requires an alternative activity or assignment aligned with the standard course of study.
The law requires an alternative curriculum if the curriculum is controversial, not the instructor. What are you talking about?
Our elementary schools should be places where children...
To be clear, people taking issue with another person's identity or mere existence is not controversial on the part of the person. It's the person making the claim who is creating the controversy. That does not mean it is legitimate just because they have manufactured a controversy. Not all controversies are legitimate concerns.
Children learn reading, writing, math, music, science, and history. They are not to be places where they're expected to navigate adult topics of sex and gender.
Once again, good thing it's a music class and it has nothing to do with sex or gender.
Repeat that, adult topics.
It's so wild how speaker after speaker after speaker, nobody can seemingly raise a concern about why this trans teacher is a problem. They talk a lot about topics and curriculum that the kids aren't prepared for, as if they actually gave a shit about the kids. Once again, none of these people, okay, a couple of them have been at previous meetings, but the two of them that we know are both pro-trans. So none of these people have ever been in a meeting before. It breaks my brain, because how can you say that we have a problem and we're not being listened to when you can't articulate a problem? You're just restating your position of bigotry, but that's not actually a problem for the school district to solve. What is it specifically you want? There to not be trans people? That's not an issue for the school. Fuck off.
Sex and gender, not for children. I'm asking this board to listen to the parents, review what has occurred in the school, ensure compliance with North Carolina law, and provide reasonable alternatives to families who object. Put the needs of the children and the...
Again, you cannot object to a person existing. That is not a legitimate objection. I mean, yes, you can, like that one dude said, you can just say things. You can do that. But it's not a legitimate objection. I object to her existing. What now? The fuck do you mean?
The rights of the families first.
So we'll turn to our next speaker, Christy Willis. Not hearing or seeing anyone get up, so we'll go to Bobby Vincent. All right. Shirley Johnson.
Like I said, there's a lot of no-shows. We will actually get through this, and we're pretty close to the end now, in fact.
Good evening. My name is Shirley Johnson. I'm a Cary resident, and I'm very concerned about what's going on with our school system. I've heard a lot of talk tonight about the gender issue. I am a former executive director for a child advocacy.
Hey, did you know that every single teacher in that school has a gender? Oh no, the children are being exposed to genders.
Center. I am a certified child forensic interviewer, and I understand the grooming nature behind this.
Grooming nature. There's a fun buzzword. What the fuck did she just say? A child forensic
conversation. Director for a child advocacy center. I am a certified child forensic interviewer, and I understand.
A certified child forensic interviewer. Certified child forensic interviewer. Okay, apparently there's a national association for that. A certified child forensic interviewer is a specialized professional who conducts legally defensible fact-finding and trauma-informed interviews with children who are victims or witnesses of abuse. And she opens by talking about grooming. Interesting. I can't imagine where this is going.
Understand the grooming nature behind this conversation and the detriment that it is to our children. I also see the detriment that it is to the education of our children. We still have middle schoolers who are struggling from the COVID fiasco. What are we doing? My question to the board is what?
The COVID fiasco? What precisely is your issue there, ma'am? Like, I don't know exactly how North Carolina handled it, but the majority of schools here in the United States simply went remote. And for some kids, it was great. For some kids, not so much. But it kept them alive. So what's the problem?
What are your plans? We have schools opening next week. Here tonight, we spent an exorbitant amount of time about your transgender teacher, but no conversation has resulted from what are we doing to have systems in place that don't make teachers and students flee the public education system. We hear a lot about school choice and the problem with school choice, but we're not giving parents a choice because we have kids who are graduating 8th grade in high school and they can't read. They will not be able to compete on the global market that we're in. And it's at the peril of this transition between social and cultural awareness and development. Values and rights should be taught by the family.
I'll give her credit. She's not reading directly off ChatGPT, but blimey, if she's made a single sentence with the opening phrase connected to the closing phrase, like this speech seems to be made of non sequiturs. It's true that the illiteracy problem is a major crisis. Behold the crowd. But that's not actually the issue. Is she lambasting the board for letting people speak on their own made-up controversy about a teacher potentially being trans? Like, again, what is your issue? What is your specific problem, and what solution would you like? You have 3 minutes. Ideally, you'd get to the fucking point.
And I find it very disparaging that we have people, especially in the education system. I have seen countless articles and news articles over the summer of teachers molesting and sexually abusing and assaulting children. One was a assistant principal, and her husband was a teacher in that same building. And all of these things are happening.
That's true. There's a whole lot of private schools, a whole lot of Catholic schools, Christian schools, and even a few public schools. It's true. That is an issue. But knowing that's an issue, what solutions can you suggest? You know? Or do you want the board to form a commission for how to make sure none of the teachers are being inappropriate with the students? That might involve discussing, you know, sex and gender with them or something. So I'm not sure how they would go about doing that. But, I mean, that's a proposal you could make.
Happening under your watch. Our kids are not being educated. They're not soaring the way they should. They're not thriving the way they should. And instead of partnering with parents to get the education on track, instead we're pushing back and we're fighting them on value issues that should be taught by them and not the school system. You should not be indoctrinating. Your role is to educate.
What do you mean? Are we indoctrinating about the COVID response? Are we indoctrinating about what do you mean? Like, this is in fairness, it's not quite to the level of word salad we're used to from people like Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro or Austin Whitsitt. But she's not she's just doing outrage at the board. Like, is there a focus here? Is there any kind of purpose? I feel like I'm hearing from fucking Kyle, you know?
Reading, writing, and arithmetic. We have kids who don't know where the Panama Canal is located. The answer's in the question, but they don't even know that. They don't know geography. They're not being taught science. I am interested in knowing what the board's position is in terms of how are you going to bridge the gap, especially for our middle school students who are still flailing from COVID, and our high school students who can't even read a declarative sentence. What is your plan to educate and not indoctrinate in this education system? Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker, Katrina Day.
Many words, much rar. Cool. Oh, they resized the list. Look at that. They shrunk the first speakers and they bigified the current speakers. So that's great. What did he say? Katrina Day. So we're at the top of the last column. I'm pretty sure at least one of these people isn't here and one of them has a different topic. It's fine.
I'm here to thank the Wake County School Board for protecting teachers and staff by standing up to bigots, anti-education bigots who want women out of education and society. I appreciate it as a Wake County Schools graduate, a parent, and soon grandparent. I won't ask for a round of applause because this is a business meeting. I offer 3 modest proposals to protect my grandchildren from these bigots. They protect your children.
Okay. I appreciate that she says right up front why she's here. Now she's saying what she wants, and she's bringing 3 specific suggestions for what she wants. Now, spoiler alert, they're not actually going to be reasonable, but at least she has a semblance of a relevant presentation.
1, offer a homeschooling curriculum for free. It helps keep the bigots away from my grandchildren. It provides opportunity for our frailest students. It lets our adults educate themselves. And by golly,
Okay, that one's fair. That one's a good idea. Like, honestly, before a parent is allowed to homeschool, and I realize in the United States homeschooling is a right, but like most parents are not actually qualified to educate. It's a bit of a problem. But cool, free homeschooling, but first the parent has to complete the same curriculum. Like, you can't teach it if you don't know it. That seems like a fair policy to me. And they will definitely get educated along the way.
we know they need it tonight. 2, name the bigots. Tell us what they cost in money, time, and stress. 3, protect the students. Keep bigots off our campuses. Relocate the
Obviously, the second point, difficult to do. The people who showed up to this meeting, sure, we have their names. It's part of public record. But who decides which one is a bigot? Who's making the decision? Who's enforcing that? How is it enforced? And how are you going to keep it from being weaponized the next time there's an election? You know, like that's it's not very workable.
the children of bigots if needed. Expel the children of bigots if needed.
Not a fan. Kids should not be punished because their parents are overgrown children. No, nope, don't like it.
Or maybe Jonathan Swift's proposal applies to bigots too.
All right, so we will go to our next speaker.
She's a bigot. I mean, I love the energy, but it's not that productive, right? Jonathan Swift's proposal that tickles my brain a little bit, but I can't quite. Swift proposal. All right. There's a book called A Modest Proposal. It's a satirical essay that suggests the starving poor people of Ireland sell their 1-year-old infants as food to rich English landlords to ease poverty and boost the economy. Sell your children to the rich. Awesome.
Margaret Bilodeau.
Hello, everyone. Long time no see. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak tonight. As you said, I'm Margaret Bilodeau, and I live in District 2. I am here tonight because a local politician is making a teacher's perceived gender identity into a public problem right before
a public spectacle. If the politician knew the teacher's name, you can bet that spectacle would turn into a smear campaign like that. I mean, half of these people are here begging for exactly that.
her election. Let's call it what it is. A campaign strategy, and a teacher's life is what she's using to build it. I don't know that teacher's gender identity. I don't need to. It isn't my business, and it sure isn't the politicians. What I do know is she found herself a story, and now she's got her coverage. Her election's coming up, and a teacher's name is being dragged through both. And this doesn't stay contained to one teacher. It reaches the whole school community.
Right. Like, we're one step from a freaking witch hunt, right? Like, you find one witch, we need to go look for others. Which of these people are in the closet? Which of these people might be having homosexual relations behind our backs? You know, it gets nutty really quick.
Every classroom, every child. So I'm asking you tonight to stay firm on this. Don't let outside political pressure decide how you treat the people who work in your schools. Students are watching, and all of them are watching, not just the kids caught up directly in this. Our LGBTQ plus students are watching, and they're learning something about whether this district will actually protect them or abandon them the second it's useful to somebody's campaign.
That is an excellent point, and it actually has something to do with the children. Like the previous speaker suggested, 3 in 100 kids statistically are trans. In this generation's surveys, preliminary surveys, because they're still children, suggest it's upwards of 20% or some flavor of LGBT. So the kids in this school and their friends are watching to see what the district does. Will this district defend them when there's political pressure?
Children with disabilities are watching too, and honestly, they already know what it feels like to be treated like a problem instead of a person. When
Holy fuck, preach. Intersectionality.
kids watch an adult get treated as disposable for someone's political gain, they learn something from that, and it sticks. Children need to be seen as themselves, and they need to see themselves represented in their teachers and their communities. They need to know that who they are isn't going to become someone's talking point or someone's campaign ad. That matters right now in this moment with an elected official making an example out of a teacher just for existing. It matters for every child in the building, whether they're the one being talked about or not, because it shows them all what respect actually looks like. And represent.
Right. Do we respect people, or are we going to make a fucking sensation out of their existing? It's so wild. Like, I mean, and we can see this, it's in South Carolina, but Representative Nancy Mace has recently gotten arm tattoos, and her supporters are losing their minds because that's not womanly, violation of Leviticus, and yada, yada, yada. They're throwing the shit she preaches back at her. You've stepped beyond your gender role. That's what she bought it, she paid for it, she owns it. But that's the sort of bullshit that this culture perpetuates. Obviously, I don't like Nancy Mace, but if we're going to make her life more difficult, let it be for the reasons she deserves it for, and not for stupid, judgmental nonsense. You know?
Representation can be a lot simpler than people make it sound. Sometimes it's just having a way to communicate. That's a way to be included in your own class. For anyone who doesn't know him, my son Ollie is nonverbal and uses a wheelchair. From his first day in Wake County Public Schools, he had a communication method that worked for him. It lets him string words together, ask for things, ask questions, sit in his classroom, and actually be a part of it like everyone else. Then his new teacher decided she didn't want to use it anymore. Not because his IEP team said so, but because she preferred it that way. So starting from day one in this district, he lost that, and so did the kids sitting near him who might have learned something from watching him communicate. Ollie came into a county-wide special education program, the kind kids get sent to from all over the county because of the level of care it's supposed to provide. That program was already short-staffed, already stretched thin. Just the school year before Ollie got that, a politician went after a special education teacher in that same program in his school. Not a trans teacher, a teacher who used an inclusive set of flashcards. The very next school year, Ollie rolled into an understaffed program, and that's the environment where a teacher decided his communication device just wasn't worth the trouble.
So again, I don't know about that specific controversy, but North Carolina law has recently, just in June, a new law came into effect saying that they're not allowed to do anything DEI, right? Like you can't even suggest it or anything that might inspire the thought of it. You know, like talk about fucking controlled speech. But so somebody threw a hissy fit, a sissy fit perhaps, and a teacher got fired over having flashcards that included controversial people existing on them. So the district already has a history of this sort of thing. It's easier to go after a set of flashcards than a person, but it seems the teacher got fired and the whole department's budget got cut. And now the teacher who's there instead doesn't actually know how to teach disabled kids, because ideological litmus tests do not play nice with best practices when it comes to special needs education. I'm sure you're all shocked about that.
Ollie doesn't go to public school anymore. We now know that his immune system is compromised and it's too dangerous. He's not here tonight to tell you that himself, and he doesn't get the months that he missed back.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gina Carucci.
So that was kind of a consequences of if we cave to the political pressure sort of situation. The kids will suffer. And she's not wrong.
Sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
It's okay. It's Carucci.
Gotcha.
It's my first time. So I just.
Sure, you can begin.
Okay,
whenever
thank
you're
you.
ready.
Good evening.
Oh, hey, Moms for Liberty lady. And notice the earlier speaker now has the phone filming her. Again, this was a live stream, this meeting. So, like, I don't know, whatever. They're going to do their own thing.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Gina Carucci, and I am here tonight as a parent and as someone who believes that our public schools have a fundamental responsibility of all else to educate and protect children. I want to talk about something I believe deserves serious attention: the rights of students when it comes to compelled speech and compelled beliefs, and the boundaries between education and personal ideology. Our children.
Yeah, those are some good questions. Does your beliefs compel everyone else's behavior? Do your beliefs compel everyone else's speech? Does your ideology determine who's even allowed in the building? It's kind of fucked up when you think about it, isn't it?
Should be able to attend school without being pressured to adopt a particular belief or worldview. Teachers have an important role in the classroom, but that role is to educate students, not to use their position.
This kind of nonsense is how you end up with stickers on your textbook saying that evolution is just a theory and shouldn't be taken seriously. There are some worldviews that actually are factual and are substantiated and should be taught to students. Not teaching them those things is harmful to them. You're doing them a disservice. You're robbing them of a quality education just because of your beliefs.
Position of authority to influence students' personal beliefs. I also want to address the issue of transgender teachers. I believe every teacher should be evaluated based on their qualifications, professionalism, ability to teach, and their treatment of students, not simply on their gender identity. At the same
Cool. She said a thing that makes sense. Now watch her, say the opposite.
time, no teacher, regardless of their identity, should pressure students to accept personal beliefs or participate in compelled speech that conflicts with their own convictions. This is not about disrespecting anyone. It is about maintaining appropriate boundaries in our public schools and making sure that students' rights and educational needs come first. Parents should be able to.
If you took a transcript of this and you ran it through an AI checker, I'm pretty sure it would come up with over 90%. There's definitely, she didn't just read off ChatGPT because, as we know, only the very lowest tier sloppy thinkers just read straight off ChatGPT. But there's a lot of flags in what she's saying and the way it's phrased.
Trust that schools will provide an environment where children can learn, ask questions, and develop their own beliefs without fear of being pressured or punished for respectfully expressing a different viewpoint.
Yes, respectfully express a different viewpoint. Ask questions. That's what school is for. But that respectful part, I wonder if Miss Ma'am here really knows what that word means.
I'm asking this board to protect viewpoint neutrality, respect parental rights, and ensure that every student is treated with dignity, regardless of their personal beliefs. Our children deserve an education that teaches them how to.
Who's saying students shouldn't be treated with dignity? What I'm hearing is people saying this teacher shouldn't be treated with dignity, but nobody suggested the students shouldn't be treated with dignity.
Think, not what to think. Thank you for your time.
All right.
What does a person being trans have to do with teaching children what to think? But also, point of order, as a member of Moms for Liberty and all the various political entailments that come along with that, she's very much a fan of telling people what they have to think and very much not how to think.
Next speaker is Kelly Willingham, followed by Wayne Willingham.
The Wilhelm. I wonder if we'll get the Wilhelm screen.
Good evening, Chair Swanson and members of the board. My name is Kelly Wilhelm. I am a graduate of Wake County Public Schools. My 4 children graduated from Wake County Public Schools, and I currently have 4 grandchildren in Wake County Public Schools. I currently serve as president of the Raleigh Apex NAACP, and I'm here tonight because when a member of our community is being targeted or publicly vilified, we have a responsibility to speak up. Tonight, I'm speaking in support of an educator, a young teacher who's in her first job out of college, teaching music to elementary school children. She chose education. She chose to serve children. She chose to bring the arts, creativity, and learning to the classroom. And instead of finding encouragement, she has become the target of political attacks because of how she wants to show up in the world.
And it's worth noting, however this goes, the children are definitely going to learn a lesson that no one signed up for in bullying. Now, once again, the teacher in question is alleged to be non-binary. Nobody actually knows because so far their identity has been kept under wraps. The newspapers, the television stations have deliberately withheld their identity to prevent harassment by this crowd. That said, they do present as femme while teaching. Why a non-binary person would do that, except to comply with a policy to minimize controversy, is hard to say. But I'll give Miss Wilhelm some credit. Since the teacher presents as femme while teaching, using she as a pronoun isn't necessarily intentional misgendering. It's a professional context kind of thing.
Let me be clear, no teacher should be targeted, harassed, or publicly vilified because of their gender identity. As the NAACP, we believe in equal protection, dignity, and fairness for every member of our community. We also believe that our schools should be places where children can learn and educators can do their jobs without being turned into political targets, especially not by a state rep whose election is coming up, who's been challenged by Windecker. And I want to put this in very personal terms. One of those grandchildren that I spoke about is my special needs granddaughter. She is in the first grade at one of your Wake County public schools. And her and her friends in her classroom right now do not have a full-time teacher. They have 2 substitutes and they have floaters who come in and out. She's been in school for 3 weeks and she is learning to adapt like she does. She is so cute and so smart, and she and her friends deserve a full-time teacher. But until a qualified one submits an application, we don't have it. So when I see someone who has done everything
it sounds like an anecdote, but this actually is a valid point. Remember, the previous speaker was talking about how the state has lost so many teachers to other states offering higher wages and lower taxes. There is a teacher shortage. It's especially bad in states that keep hemorrhaging educators. So maybe you ought to take care of the few educators you've got, you know?
Parents and grandparents told us to do: work hard, go to school, graduate, get a good job. And she made the decision to enter one of the most demanding and one of the most important professions we have. I don't see someone we should be trying to drive away. The NAACP will continue to stand against discrimination and intimidation in all of its forms. We should be more concerned about, less concerned about compelled speech and more compelled to do what's right and to see the humanity in everyone.
Yes, less about entitlement and more about responsibility. What are our responsibilities? The duties that we owe to each other.
I believe we should be a community that says to every qualified educator who wants to serve our children, you belong here, your work matters, and we will not allow you to be bullied out of the classroom. Thank you for your time and all you do to keep children safe and keep them educated.
Fuck yeah. That was a good one. And again, intersectionality. You cannot avoid it. And I love that the NAACP is taking a stand on this. But you notice a sharp divide in the way the speakers have gone throughout the course of these presentations. We've got the people on the, shall we say, right, who keep going, me, my beliefs, wah, what I want, what I think should be. And then we've got people on, shall we say, the left who are saying what's best for the kids. What's best for the education system? You know, what are the actual priorities? It's not about me. It's about everyone, or at the very most isolated, the kids. It's an interesting shift in perspective.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wayne Wilhelm.
Good evening, Chair Swanson and board members. My name is Reverend Wayne Wilhelm. I serve as the first vice president, Raleigh Apex NAACP, and also a faith tri-chair for the North Carolina Poor People's Campaign. I'm here this evening to stand with, support, and advocate for an elementary school teacher who has become the target of political attacks because of the way they choose to identify. At the center of this issue is a simple principle. Every teacher deserves to be treated with dignity, respect, and fairness. All teachers should be able to come to school focused on educating and caring for their students without being subjected to harassment, intimidation, or public attacks because of their identity. As a faith leader, I believe our response should be grounded in compassion. Across all faith traditions, we are recognized.
Now, I do want to point this out. So many of these people were like, my faith, my religion, my beliefs, and here is an actual faith leader, a minister, a pastor, a reverend, something like that. Again, I don't know these people personally, but you can see that little bit of a collar, even though he's got a t-shirt going on. He's part of a ministry effort. This man actually is involved with faith, with beliefs, with these kinds of morals, if you will. And here he is taking a stand while everybody else is running around brandishing crosses. He's trying to live out the things that Jesus said, unlike the people performatively wearing crosses. Interesting.
We are called to recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We may not always understand another person's experience. We may not agree on every issue, but we are still called to treat one another with kindness, humility, and respect.
That is a mouthful, and one that sadly falls on deaf ears. You know, you've got Moms for Liberty tweeting away in the background, that sort of thing. Oh. I often wind up telling people, you know, I'll answer a few questions as time allows, and they'll be like, I just don't understand trans people. I just don't understand how intersex works. Cool. Learn more. Like, there's lots of resources. I'm happy to answer more questions on a different day. But there's other resources besides that, including the website, betterthanever.com. This side, betterthanever.com, where there's literally resources. That's what it's for. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you don't have to understand another person's experience or the life they live to treat them like a person, to respect them as a person. We talk about literacy issues. We talk about funding issues and staffing shortages in the schools. But that is the fundamental lesson, even more important than reading. First and foremost, people are people. And I don't know why that's controversial.
Elementary school teachers have a very important responsibility. They create classrooms where children not only learn reading, writing, mathematics, and music and arts, but this is where they also learn how to treat other people. And if we expect our children to practice kindness, respect differences, and stand up for others when they are treated bad and called names, then the adults around them have to model that same value.
Right. Kids learn what they live. You model the behavior. You show them that we stand up to bullies. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes the bullies will make things awfully difficult for you, but it doesn't matter. We stand up to bullies.
Faith communities need to be the voices of peace and inclusion when public conversation becomes hostile and hateful. Behind every political attack is a real person, a teacher, a colleague, a neighbor, a parent, or a member of our community. And our moral conscience should challenge us to speak against bullying and harassment and stand beside people who feel isolated or targeted. Our schools should be places where educators can teach and children can learn without fear. We should judge teachers by the quality of their work, their commitment to their students, and the care they show their school community, not by whether they make someone else feel uncomfortable. Maybe instead of attacking and demeaning how teachers show up, maybe we could advocate for higher pay for our teachers so they don't have to show up tired after having to work a second shift job the night before. Maybe instead of attacking teachers, we should attack policies and legislation that are taking funding away from our public schools. Maybe instead of spending our time being concerned about what teachers are wearing, maybe we could be concerned that every child has food or breakfast for lunch. Thank you for your time this evening and all you do to ensure children in Wake County are safe, educated, and accepted.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Hell yeah. That was some good shit. And a reminder, not only did a politician make a big deal out of the fact that there's a allegedly trans teacher at the school, but proposed a gender-based dress code, which is part of the controversy as well, because it's fucking crazy. It's fucking nonsense. It would be wonderful if people could stand up when they see something that's so obviously political ideology, because not one person has an issue with anything this trans teacher has done. They're there because the teacher exists, because they have a job. By all indications, this is a perfectly upstanding citizen that no one has taken issue with. Most of them don't even know this person's name. So what exactly is their problem, except for the bigotry? And again, because, people come and go throughout longer streams like these, I want to remind everybody, this is exactly how the same group of people acted 20 years ago when they were hiring gay teachers, and 40 years ago when then they were hiring African-American teachers, and 80 years ago when they were hiring women teachers. Every single time, it's the same playbook. It's not that you've done something wrong. It's that my beliefs say that you shouldn't be teaching because of what kind of person you are. You'd think eventually we would learn, but we keep cutting funding for our schools to keep that from happening.
Is Richard Bridges, followed by Dr. Kimberly Mokhtarian.
I'm here tonight to ask for three things. An update to Policy 4309 to include written notification about all disciplinary actions taken against children to their parents. To ask you to adopt a policy that notifies parents when their children have been involved in bullying events. And to clearly define what constitutes an in-school suspension. I can tell you from firsthand experiences.
Okay, so his concerns are legitimate. They're worth talking about, but they're not the subject of tonight's kerfuffle, so I'm going to skip him too. And that'll bring us to our last person, Dr. Kimberly, whom is she's a history teacher. She's taught ethics, history, and science across the county, including in the county jail. You know what? Maybe she'll introduce herself, so I'll give her the opportunity to do so.
Dr. Mokhtarian.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Kimberly Mokhtarian. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I am here in regards to Wake County Public School students, primarily African-American children who have been in this system for well over 100 years. However, in the school systems, we've been existing here on this shore for 400 years. And some of the things that I'm hearing after this country is celebrating 250 years of still the hardships that we are facing in the communities of education. and what it looks like when it returns to Southeast Raleigh. We have to address that. Why? Because I am a living descendant of what they call Lincolnville. Now, you may not know what Lincolnville is, but Lincolnville is a freedmen's village, one of the 13 in the city of Raleigh, stolen by the state, and it actually would have sat on the Lenovo Center. It would also...
Now, this isn't actually related to the trans topic either. However, she's the last speaker, and I don't want to cut her off.
Would have sat at North Carolina State University's Carter Finley Stadium. And then they told us that we had to sell our church for $1 to build a state prison for $1. So we own land. We're not poor. So when you look at your budget and say we can't afford special ed, perhaps we shouldn't have never been in special ed. We should have been much more wealthier. We should have been here, Cary, Mooresville, and not creating a pipeline to your 5 alternative schools like Mary Phillips, River Oaks, Longview, where 90% of our children are in alternative programs and can barely make it out. We should have been having a Beltline way or your tollway to UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, and to your pharmaceutical industries. We're not represented there because we can't get it right here. So,
okay, so what she's talking about is the organization she works with is called Save Our Sons, which is about the school to prison pipeline. And she deals with a bunch of issues relating to racial prejudice, poverty, a whole bunch of intersectional issues that result in the systemic racism that we still see across much of the South. And she's referring to how the school systems are not doing a super great job. They should have funding that makes sure their kids are ready to go to North Carolina schools after graduation instead of going to prison. And she is not wrong. She only has 3 minutes. I don't know that this is necessarily the best way to make this presentation, but she's going to make it.
I'm calling on you to make a change, and let's have a real conversation. Let's look at the numbers. Let's go back and look at the legacy of our African-American children and where they came from so that they can bear up pride. That's right, dignity and respect, so we don't have to beg to be at someone's table with DEI, because they've already been diverse. We should be already included, and we should already have equity by now. I'm asking for a stronger conversation because it is needed, and to do so from year to year is disrespectful, and it's unfair to our children to go through the motions of what you call education when they're really being indoctrinated. And each year, you march them into graduation by passing the very person in the colonial, Sir Walter Raleigh, who brought them over here in slavery. That's right. He was a pirate and a gang member. And every year when they graduate, they have to walk past him as if he is to be honored.
Wake County is right next to Raleigh, North Carolina, which is named for Sir Walter Raleigh. There's so much history tied up in that. Her point is that there's statues of Walter all over the damn place, and ostensibly one near the graduation stage, I guess. So it is kind of fucked up that the descendants of enslaved people have to walk past a statue of one of the people who set up the conditions for their ancestors' oppression in order to receive their diplomas after being forced graduated without even necessarily knowing how to read. It's pretty fucked up.
Every year you march them into Reynolds Coliseum, who was a slave owner out of Virginia. And he was able to transfer his money right here and build a plantation in North Carolina at Winston-Salem. So I want you all, if you are educated, then it makes sense to our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for that meeting coming up.
Thank you. All right. So that concludes public.
So she proposed a meeting. Great. You make your speech, you say, I want a meeting, and then she's preemptively thanking for the... Love it. I love that she's out there doing this, you know? Like there's, again, intersectionality. How every single marginalized community is treated impacts every other marginalized community in some way. This is why we all have a responsibility to stand up to bullying of any of us.
public comments. At this
Now, this is the end of the speakers, but I do want you to stick around for just a little bit longer to see what happens when they start the actual business meeting.
point, I will entertain an agenda. Got to get my words, it's the heat. I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. Vice Chair Hershey,
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
is there a second? It's been seconded by Board Member Rice. Any discussion on the said motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of the adoption of the consent agenda, let it be known by the sign of aye. Opposed, same sign. I have an 8-1 in my 8-1.
Well, look at that. All the conservatives who are so concerned about the schools are leaving. Now that the actual school board meeting is happening and the cameras aren't on them, they're no longer interested. Almost like they don't actually give a shit about the schools. Huh. Alrighty, folks, that's what I wanted to cover. Because this just happened, because there's so many of the arguments that we often get exposed to tied up in this. I felt it was important, it was useful, and it was timely because this meeting just happened yesterday. Thank you for being here for this. I very much appreciate it, especially as health continues to be an issue. And so I can't do these shows as often as I used to. And the fact I was able to get through this one, almost a miracle, shall we say? So I'm glad you were here. I'm especially glad for those of you who stuck around. And as always, I'll be back when I can. I am working on projects behind the scenes. I've got one video about intersex history just about finished with pre-production. I'm hoping to wrap that up tonight. I've got another one that I started this morning because I can't ever focus on just one thing. And of course, there's other goodies always in the wings, I suppose. And of course, I could pop up at any given time. So make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell rung. Also, while you're pushing buttons, please take a second to hit the share button, because reaching people is getting harder and harder on these YouTubes. It helps a lot. Also, remember, it's Trans Flag Day. So do take a stop by the through the gift shop, as they say, and pick yourself up a Space Pride flag, possibly a trans flavored one, or a sticker, or whatever. You know, they're my designs. It's my store. It helps support what I'm trying to do, mostly by letting me get groceries, hopefully next month. And thanks to everybody who sent a little something along the way. My grocery bill is very, very small, but I had no budget, and now I have some budget. I very much appreciate it. I'm so out of practice because I haven't been doing shows as often as I used to could. Thank you all so much for coming. Until next time, live long and prosper. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for July. Miranda, Tux, Ian Chen, Maya Adkison, Robin Webster, Karen Butcher, Ember Lynn, Margie, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Thriver Scapegoat, Katie Bluebird, Noise Ending, Secular Feelinist, and Alira the Free. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember, or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.